Hey everybody, Dustin Schmidt here again today. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a super low budget commercial that I shot. We're going to go watch the spot and then we're going to come back, talk about it, talk about how it was concepted, how it was lit, and how it was shot. So let's watch the spot now and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Sickness can spread fast, but with Lysol you can go into protect mode. Lysol kills 99.9% of bacteria, even on soft surfaces. For the things you touch, nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect.
So there's the spot. Go ahead and leave your comments down below. Let me know what you thought, what you would have done differently, how you might have concepted it, or different shot ideas or things like that. I love to hear that stuff. I love to read it. It helps me out when I'm looking to do future spots, and especially what it helps me out with is when I go to do spots for clients. That experience of kind of working through that here on YouTube is actually really helpful when it gets to those situations. So I recommend that everybody do something like this where you just work with what you have, what you've got available to you in your house, equipment you have available to you, all that kind of stuff, to really shoot your own spec spots and figure out what works and what doesn't. I think oftentimes what you will find is what you think works in your head, and even when you storyboard it, when you actually shoot it and then get it into the edit, does not work exactly the way that you thought it would. So it's really critical, I think, to work through these projects all the way from start to finish. It's one thing to watch how somebody else lights something and think, oh yeah, well that's easy, piece of cake, right? Like that's how I would do it. But then you do it maybe within your own circumstances or situations, and it doesn't work for that situation, or something else would work better. And the only way to get better at that stuff is to literally do it. So as much as I love getting on YouTube, I've learned a ton on here, follow a bunch of people that I admire and respect and enjoy their content. It's entertaining and it's educational. I would suggest that you check something out, you watch it, and then you go and actually apply it. See how it works, learn from it, and then rinse and repeat, right? So that you can continue to get better from putting this time in to doing the stuff that we love to do. So this project was shot on the Canon C200. I didn't shoot on the R5C, which I think is probably technically a little better camera, image-wise, believe it or not. But the RAW on the C200 is still really good, and it was kind of a challenge to myself. This is my main cinema camera right now, the C200, and I wanted to see what could I shoot with it. Could I shoot a full spot with the lenses that I have, with the camera that I have? Again, trying to work with what do I have on hand, not to let the lenses or the camera be the thing that's holding me back from creating stuff. So it was all shot in Canon RAW, processed to C-Log2, color graded in DaVinci Resolve. The lenses that I used for this were the Sigma 18-35. So anything wider on that is usually the Sigma 18-35 at f1.8. I've got a Canon 24 1.4. I think I shot the wide shot of our, kid on the floor with the dog was a 24 at 1.4. And I've got a 24-70 2.8 and a 70-200 2.8. Anything from 50 to around 70 was shot at 2.8 on the 24-70. And then the one shot of our mom popping into the, close up in the hallway was on the 70-200 at 2.8. So all Canon L series glass, but zooms, mixture of zooms and primes. And then that Sigma 18-35 was the lensing for this. There was a black Pro Mist quarter strength that I just transferred between lenses for all the shots, just to take a little bit of the edge off the digital. And haze in most of the shots, although some of them it was at varying levels, trying to keep that consistent was a little bit tough as a one-man crew here. So I'm going to break this down shot by shot, and we'll just go through each setup. Some of these I have behind the scenes photos for that I can show. Some I don't, just because it got a little crazy shooting the whole thing, and I didn't really have a chance to remember to do all that. So let's check it out, and then we'll break it down. So this is a spot that I shot, concepted, lit, directed, operated camera, did every single job on this spot. I don't recommend that you do this for real if you have a client, because clients don't want to wait around while you do every single job. That's where a little experience comes in to know what it's going to take to execute whatever spot or commercial it is that you're shooting, the amount of time that it's going to take between setups, and just what it takes to get that done quickly and efficiently. Usually for clients that want a 30-second commercial spot that's going to air on TV, that has a media buy, all that kind of stuff. Price is not as much of a concern as speed and quality. So prepared to pay more to get it done more quickly at the level and the quality that they expect. So, all right, let's look at these shots. So this first shot of our actress here, the wide shot on the couch. I actually did something similar to this in another video where I talked about how to light a living room. It was almost this exact same setup. And the reason why I came back to it is because I did that setup and figured that this needed to be a full-blown spot. I think I shot a little 3-shot sequence for that. And I'll also put the link to that up that you can go check out if you'd like. But basically kind of recycled that, took what I liked about it, and redid it a little bit. So here's the setup for this shot. We've got a bunch of neg over on the left side here, just to kill some of the spill. We've got an Aperture 600X out the window that's put in this hard light slash on the couch. We've got a key light on our actress here, just to bring her up a little bit. I want to shoot into the shadow side, but I don't want her completely in silhouette or shadow. So I've got a Hornet 200C into a bounce that's just kind of bringing up her level a little bit in the front. And then in the back, I've got some practicals on and just curtains open in the back room to bring in some natural sunlight back there. Now on this second shot, when we move into the close-up, it's essentially the exact same lighting setup. So nothing has changed here. I've just moved in slightly different angle, different lens here. And, you know, if I had to do this over, I would probably adjust a few things. I think she could use a little more key on her, but we're still getting a transition from kind of light to dark. It doesn't feel too overly lit in my opinion. We've got some nice highlight still that's coming in on the blanket. It just feels kind of natural. So I'm gonna break this down shot by shot and we'll just go through each setup. Some of these I have behind the scenes photos for that I can show. Some I don't, just because it got a little crazy shooting the whole thing and I didn't really have a chance to remember to do all that. So let's check it out and then we'll break it down. Sure, but if I recall, what I wanted was some depth here, so I wanted to get something going into the back room. So you can see from our wide shot previously, this is just a lot tighter and you see a lot more of that curtain in the back room. Just kind of for some depth there. But if I had to do this over, what I would do is bring her forward into the living room to get even more depth. Because I'm so tight on her, you can't really tell where she's standing when we cut to this shot. And because of her being in that little back hallway, I had some trouble with where I could place my key light, how I could diffuse it, where to put the negative. But I would have been better served by literally just moving her forward about 4 or 5 feet out of that hallway. And that would have helped me a lot when it comes to lighting, depth, all those types of things. So that's why you do these. You kind of live and learn. Now for this product spot, this is kind of the introduction of our Lysol disinfectant spray. Mom comes in, grabs it to go do a little work with it. This is just a countertop shot. Lighting these product shots is actually pretty easy because you're not, lighting the product is pretty easy, but getting some interest in that frame, I think is probably where you need to spend more of your time on the art direction, on, you know, maybe some color contrast, little points of interest. That's where it gets a little, not more difficult, but just where you should spend more time. So here's a wide shot of that setup. We've got a bunch of neg over on the right side here, just to bring in some contrast. Outside the window, we've got the Aperture 600X with the Fresnel. That's what's given us that warm kind of splash on the countertop there. We've got a Hornet 200C at daylight, just bouncing to the ceiling to bring up the ambient there. And then underneath the countertop, this warm kind of downlight is just a Quasar 7-inch tricolor tube. I call it a tricolor, not a bicolor, because they updated the firmware at one point to where you could get 3 color temps out of those original Quasars, little battery powered tubes. I think it's called the Q-Lion. That's an old tube. It's one of the first ones I got. I still use quite a bit for this type of stuff. And I just taped it under the counter, put it to a warm color for some color contrast, and did a little dolly move from left to right here. So you just barely pick up a little bit of that sunlight splash in the foreground. You get some warmth in the background, and then just angling kind of down the countertop so we get some depth there. This next shot is the only shot that I went slow-mo on. This was shot at 60 frames per second and then slowed down for a 23:9:8 timeline. This was also dolling back, so just getting focus on the Lysol can, and then as our mom kind of sprays across the pillow that was coughed into, we just track with the can and try to keep that in focus. Actually just used the tracking in the Canon C200 for this, tapped on the can, and then just tried to keep it centered within that. So didn't have to pull focus, anything like that. And it worked really well, especially for a one-man kind of crew here. Additionally, what we've got going on in this frame, we've still got some hard light. We got the 600X coming in through the window in the back. That's what's giving us kind of our backlight, window light. We've got 200C bounced into Ultra Bounce 4x floppy or 40-inch floppy, just to again bring up that side. And then we've got neg on the foreground side so that we're shooting into the shadow. We're getting a nice wrap over the hand as that hand tracks towards us. This little push into the mom here in the kitchen, she hears the cough, and we track into her really quickly as she turns to look from working here at the oven. A couple interesting things here, but also a bunch of stuff I would do differently if I had to do this again. We're lighting her from the back. We've got the 600X out the window. That's kind of giving her a back edge light. If I had to do that again, I probably would have just like put some neg over there, which I do have some neg, but it's kind of we've got some contrasting, conflicting shadows here. Not as much difference in tonality as I would like. But a couple things I did to try to mitigate that. So again, very limited space to light her from here. So what I did, one was clamp a 12-inch Q-line to the cabinet and just turn that horizontally, adjusted the color temp on that, and that acted as her key light. It looked okay on the day. In the grade, I don't like it as much. I wish it would be softened a lot more. It kind of flattens her out, and the shadow's very harsh under her chin. So would like to have softened that quite a bit more, and could have really, in retrospect. There's a lot of different things I could have done there, but was moving a little bit too fast. We've also got that 7-inch Q-line that you saw earlier is taped under the range hood, and that's given us kind of some downlight and just some contrast on the, you can see some of that on the oven reflecting. And then in the background, I've got the 200C coming from the other room, lighting up the cabinets and the wall and providing kind of a hot highlight there to contrast with the curtains in the deep back that go dark. So just trying to get that salt and pepper of light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, and provide more of an interesting frame here. So I like the camera movement. I like the direction. A couple things with the lighting I think could have been tweaked here. Now, when we go to this reverse shot, this is real simple. All we have is some neg in the front, trying to darken that down, and one 600X out the window that I've angled as much as I can to try to get on the back wall and kind of hit behind our talent. So you can see it's just hitting the back of her head, but this is just a real simple setup here. Then when we go to the mom spraying the handle here, it's the exact same lighting setup, but our contrast is quite different here because the hand is really in a position to where it can reach and be a lot closer to the neg. And also it's not like a body that's, getting hit from the back with the light because we're zoomed in a lot tighter. So you get a lot more contrast in this shot than you did previously. If I had to do it again, I would have tried to edge, my kid talent closer to me, but then it kind of puts her off from where she was reaching for the handle. So just kind of had to work with what I had angles wise. This living room setup, we're just tracking from left to right. A couple different things going on here. We've got neg over on the right to give us some contrast there, kill any spill off the wall. To the right of this frame. Outside the window, we've got a 200X coming in from left to right. That's what's giving us that highlight on the floor and that feeling of sunlight coming in. The back window that we see in frame, we've just exposed for that window. There's nothing coming through that, and that kind of goes back to what a lot of people say, but Wandering DP, who I'm a big fan of, if you watch his stuff on YouTube, you always light from the window you don't see. So that's what we're doing right here. And then we've also got, coming from this left-hand side, we've got a little octabox on the 200C that is kind of keying our dog and our young talent here. Otherwise they would be real dark because there's no light on them here. And then I want our mom to kind of go more into shadow in the back. So she's not getting much of that. She's kind of more the level that you would get, although she's getting a little bit of that octabox spill on her, but otherwise our foreground talent would be a lot darker. For this shot, we just kind of flipped around a couple things. We brought the neg over to the left, brought in that octabox on camera right, move that around so that we kind of wrap the window around her face. The idea being that, she's being lit by the window, although she's not. We have moved the light now, that light that was outdoor. Previously, we were lighting through that window that you can now see behind her. Now we've moved the light over to the other window that we saw in the previous shot. So now the light's coming in from the back. We're lighting from the window we can't see, and we've exposed for the window behind her. But it all works because you can't, it still feels like sunlight coming from that back corner. So she's getting a little bit of some hot kind of streaks on her and then something a little softer on the face from that octabox that we brought in. And then for our reverse shot here of the dog, I think we brought the neg over to the right, but really we just kind of flipped camera around to the other side. I think he was getting hit from some of that light coming in through the window. This was a tough one because the key thing was just getting the right reaction out of him. And so he moved around a bit, moved in and out of the key just to get him to sit and do that little head turn. Took a lot of takes, and I just kind of went with what I got. Once I got it, I got it. And if the lighting wasn't perfect, that was okay. And then our product shot here. We've got a little bit of haze in the background. We're actually exposing for this back right window at this point. We've got our key, more foreground here to the right. Just 200C bounced into an ultra bounce, neg here on the left, and then the 600X is actually in the house this time, and it's just giving us a back left kind of backlight. Doesn't always make a ton of sense, doesn't feel exactly like light coming in from like the back window, but at this point you don't know what you're looking at. You're like, maybe there's a window back there, who cares? Just trying to get an interesting product shot and leave a little space on the right for our animation. So once again, thanks for coming by, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.